soul. I've been alone too long. Somebody without someone is no one at all. And baby, all these nights I've struggled and fought my pride, scared that someone your type couldn't see past my flaws. 'Cause I heard that heaven ain't easy to get to. Ooh. The closest I'll get might be right next to you. Ooh, I gotta feel how it feels to be loved by you. Ooh, I gotta touch something real. Can I feel and be loved by you? Jealousy is getting the best of me, thinking of how you sleep without me in tow. And I have no peace till you give me clarity. Yeah, I need to hear and see if I matter at all. 'Cause I heard that heaven ain't easy to get to. Ooh, closest I'll get might be right next to you. Ooh, I gotta know, I gotta feel how it feels to be loved by you. Ooh, I gotta touch something real. Can I feel and be loved by you? Ooh, I gotta feel it, how it feels to be loved. Ooh, I gotta feel it, how it feels to be loved. Ooh, now I might not get another chance. How it feels to be somebody special. Does it feel be loved by you?
Do I move you? Do I move you? Are you willing? Do I groove you? Is it thrilling? Do I soothe you? Tell the truth now. Do I move you? Are you loose now? The answer better be. It pleases me. Are you ready for this action? Does it give you satisfaction? amazes me. When I touch you, do you quiver? From your head down to your liver. If you like it, let me know it. Don't be psychic, or you'll blow it. The answer better be great God Almighty that pleases me. Whoa! When your baby leaves you all alone and nobody calls you on the phone, don't you feel like a crying? Don't you feel like crying? Well, here I am, honey. Come on, you cry to me. When you're all alone in your lonely room, and there's nothing but the smell of her perfume, don't you feel like a crying? Don't you feel like crying? Don't you feel like a cry? Come on, cry to me. Oh, nothing can be sadder than a glass of wine alone. Loneliness, such a waste of time. Oh yeah, you don't ever have to walk alone. You see, come on, take my hand, baby, won't you walk with me? Oh yeah, when you're waiting for a voice to come in the night, but there's no one. Don't you feel like a cry? Don't you feel like crying? Don't you feel like a cracker, crying? Don't you feel like a cracker,
Butterflies.
All you got to do is walk away and pass me by. must be dreaming, can't be real. You're not here with me. See what I can feel you're near to me. I caress you, let you taste us just so blissful. Listen, I would give you anything, babe. Just make my dream come true. Oh, baby, you give me butterflies.
Touch, take, kiss, have a wish that I could be with you. You give me butterflies inside, inside, inside.
All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. Don't what people say, we know the truth. All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. Enough is enough of this garbage.
Listen to my war cry. I'm gifted. I done seen bullets soar by with my own eyes. I'm angelical. I am not of this world, nigga. That's what I'm telling you. My ears are my eyes. My eyes are my ears. I see what you saying. I hear what you feel. But you ain't talking about too much. That badge and that gun in your hand got you acting too tough. You crazy? Real soon niggas gon' bust back. Don't play with me. At the round table we gon' discuss that. We must protect us at all costs. If it means acting like Nat Turner, cutting the master head off, let's do it. Freedom ain't free and peace ain't either. And if you married that woman, don't cheat on her or beat her. Gotta protect the queens. Let them know that we gon' love them, that's by any means. Treat every man like your brother, only if he for the cause though. Cause most of these niggas still living lost though. Miserable lost souls. As the Lord weeps when an angel die. Gangsta paradise, the soundtrack of dangerous minds. I got a dangerous mind, when I aim at swine. Turn them pigs to bacon bits when I'm banging mine. Why should I turn the other cheek when you hit me first? And why should I pray for you when you trying to get me murked? This mind elevation. I walk with both eyes closed, but my third eye's open, nigga. That's how I know the people all is foolishness. Before I sell my soul for a steak, I'll forever eat tuna fish. Let us bow our head and say a prayer. Heavenly Father, are you listening? Are you there? Do you care about them crackers shooting niggas down? And if you do, let us know what we should do now. War cry, protect the women and the children. Bloody revolution. If you told it, you better pull it. Only a foolish man will believe in this racist system. It's time to fight back. Ain't no more time to play the victim. All Muslims, all Christian, all Jehovah's Witness, all 5%ers. If you black, you still a nigga. Take the veil from off your eyes. I peeped the false statements, allegations, in other words, I saw them lies. Everybody got eyes, but everybody not gon' see. Everybody won't change, but don't nobody wanna bleed. War cry when it's on its own. Two straps, one black and chrome. It's a new world order, and I gotta protect my own. Gotta protect my home. Searching my house without a warning. I spit one at your dome. I'm a man first, you gon' respect that. Violate my human rights, you getting left where you stand at. They're attacking and abusing me. And if you black, keep your black dollars in the black community. No longer will we suffer punishment. Middle finger to the Constitution. Let's build our own government. War.
All my Aborigines tribe up. Dog, I make my own cash, we don't do taxes in a check. Put them taxes in the hood, we don't fuck with the IRS. You don't press your own con, but you show the cop respect. Same one locked up your homie, but you scared to get him back. Man, go get him back in blood. All them bodies that you got, the KKK and catch a slug. Fuck a free, my homie, Asada shit. Go get him back in blood. Yeah, you know who locked your homie up. Go get him back in blood. If George Zimmerman ain't dead, I don't wanna hear about how you tough. Claim you a shooter when the cops come. You run and toss your gun. While we aiming at each other when we got a bigger war. Niggas must have forgot what this gang banging really for. Man, you niggas really lost. If you don't own your own land, stop walking around like you a boss. Rappers giving giving bread to charity, go do some shit for real. All that gangster shit you talking, get raped when you take a deal. Man, you niggas ain't on shit. You my brother cause we black, I don't care if you blood or crip. If you don't own your own hood, stop talking gangster. You ain't nip. The rap execs invest in prisons, then use us to fill them shit. Dog, I make my own cash, we don't do taxes in a check. Put them taxes in the hood, we don't fuck with the IRS. You oppress your own kind, but you show the cop respect. Same one locked up your homie, but you scared to get him back. Man, go get him back in blood. All them bodies that you got, the KKK and catch a slug. Fuck a free my homie Asada shit, go get him back in blood. Yeah, you know who locked your homie up, go get him back in blood. Niggas know who locked they
Shout out to all the American Aborigines. TVs in the building, Aboriginal TVs in the building. The God of the Geeches is in the motherfucking building. Top of the morning, balance of the evening. We got 23 people in the building. Appreciate if y'all bang that like button, share the video out for me one time. See who we got up there. I got EG720 in the building. I see my brother Roger W in the building. American Warrior in the building. What's up, brother? Bronze in the motherfucking building. Got a Boone in the building. Evans Clan. I see Camo Joe in the building. Redskin. What up with it? Geneva Garrett. What's goody? Red. Oh, I already said red, didn't I? Aboriginal Truth Seeker. Of course, Miss Geechee's in the building. See Stephanie Burke in the building. All right, let's get into episode 1. Hold on, let me get back. Right. Human zoos, World Fair, the founding of America. Let's go.
Osborne became one of the most celebrated scientific champions of evolution in America. Soon he would become embroiled in a controversy with politician William Jennings Bryan over a fossilized tooth discovered in Nebraska. Osborne insisted that the tooth supplied irrefutable evidence of the existence of man-like apes in ancient North America. To his embarrassment, the tooth later turned out to be part of an extinct pig. At the Eugenics Congress, Osborne told scientists that eugenics was essential to the future of human evolution.
To know the worst as well as the best in heredity, to preserve and to select the best. These are the most essential forces in the future evolution of human society.
Osborne also attacked racial intermarriage.
500,000 years of human evolution have impressed certain distinctive virtues as well as faults on each race. Put 3 races together, you are likely to unite the vices of all 3 as the virtues.
Osborne argued that racial groups should be studied to determine what tasks each race is best fitted to accomplish. But it was clear that he already thought he knew the proper place of non-whites.
If the Negro fails in government, he may become a fine agriculturalist or a fine mechanic.
The American Museum of Natural History accompanied the Eugenics Congress with a major museum exhibition designed to sell eugenics to the American public.
All right, so let's set the table, y'all. How was they able to influence all these newly birthed cabbage patches, or newly naturalized citizens? How are they able to program them with all the same indoctrination. My theory is it starts with the world fairs. As we'll see a little bit later, like, this is a perfect place where all of them was gonna come. And if you don't think they had a movie theater, you was a motherfucking mistake. That's one of probably the biggest attractions to see these silent movies, as they say, right? So peep game, watch this.
Participants included America's top publishers, insurance companies, government agencies, and private groups like the American Red Cross. As many as 10,000 ads included America's top sell eugenics to the American public. Participants included America's top publishers, insurance companies, government agencies, and private groups like the American Red Cross. As many as 10,000 people attended the special exhibition. There were no live humans put on display at the eugenics exhibit, but it was still a kind of human zoo. It put human racial groups under the microscope to judge their worth to society. There were displays highlighting differences between black and white babies in the womb. Displays comparing the mental stamina of different races. Displays reporting on the capabilities of immigrants. And displays showcasing equipment for measuring human intelligence and other features. There also were displays about the human brain. One compared the brains of criminals and non-criminals. But the most extensive brain display was created by anthropologist Alish Hrdlicka from his growing collection of embalmed brains. Hrdlicka left his original specimens stored in jars at the Smithsonian, but he brought gelatin models of the embalmed brains of apes and 3 races of humans. Hrdlicka's presentation filled 7 separate display cases. It also included a series of skulls from Native Americans. The skulls purported to show that Native American brains revealed primitive features from earlier stages of evolution. In the midst of more sophisticated displays were cruder exhibits featuring the blatantly racist books of Madison Grant and Lothrop Stoddart. Stoddart had published The Rising Tide of Color Against White World Supremacy. Stoddart claimed that whites were in danger of being overrun by the colored races of the world, and he argued that immigration from what he called lower human types had to be rigorously curtailed.
Eugenists pretty universally viewed immigrants and people of non-white races as a drag on the human race. Eugenists viewed blacks and Mexicans and Hispanics as throwbacks, evolutionary throwbacks that were lower races in evolutionary terms and therefore were a drain on modern society. And they justified this in the name of Darwinian science. There were racists before the eugenists. The interesting thing about the eugenists was the way that they built on top of Darwinian biology and claimed that there was a scientific justification for racism.
The eugenics exhibition advocated a chilling agenda for public policy, including forced sterilization and harsh new restrictions on immigration. It also promoted a radical proposal advanced by the Eugenics Record Office, one of the eugenics groups participating in the exhibition. The proposal called for assembling biological profiles on all Americans to determine whether they were biologically fit to mate.
The Eugenics Records Office was so extreme, they wanted to hold records on everyone in the United States, biological records showing their family trees, so that if you wanted to marry someone, you could write to them and they could tell you whether the person you're wanting to marry had a fit family tree in evolutionary terms, so that you could marry them, or if they had bad heredity.
He's telling they was doing the genealogy on motherfuckers to see if anybody in their family had been deemed unfit.
So that you couldn't. And in fact, they had exercises and packets that were given to biology teachers around the country, that one of the exercises you were supposed to do in your biology class when you were studying evolution and then eugenics was to have kids fill out this form with their family tree of who were the black sheep of the family, what diseases they had in the family, so that these could then be sent off to the Eugenics Record Office and their vaults, and so that they could keep records on everyone.
The American Museum of Natural History, later called the Eugenics Congress of 1921, perhaps the most important scientific meeting ever held in the museum. A decade later, the museum was at it again, hosting the Third International Congress of Eugenics in 1932. This time, it put on an even more extensive museum exhibition for the public. At the entrance to the exhibit hall were placed the busts of two men accredited as the founding fathers of eugenics.
That's probably why the goddamn stock market crashed. You bitches was over there doing a whole bunch. You was holding the expos and doing all of this, and you wasn't counting the money right. Something was going on. I believe 33 is when the markets crashed, and then in 32, y'all holding exhibits, y'all holding eugenics congress. Then all of a sudden the money disappeared. We got to start over.
Francis Galton and Charles Darwin. Although some scientists raised concerns about eugenics, probably the strongest opposition to the movement came from traditional religion.
It's a story that Americans don't know as well as they should, and it's a story that American Christians don't know as well as they should. But at the basis of opposition to the so-called scientific eugenicist movement in the early 20th century were Christians, Protestants, Baptists, Catholics, who understood the value of every human being. That's not only a Christian value, that is fundamental to the American experiment itself.
When Nebraska's legislature passed a forced sterilization bill in 1913, Governor John Morehead, a Presbyterian, vetoed it. Morehead argued that the legislation not only violated the state's Bill of Rights, it also offended a higher law.
This proposed legislation seems more in keeping with the pagan age than with the teachings of Christianity. Man is more than an animal.
While many modernist clergy supported eugenics, theologically conservative religious figures were much more skeptical. American evangelical William Jennings Bryan, for example, denounced eugenics as an impossible system for scientific breeding under which a few supposedly superior intellects, self-appointed, would direct the mating and the movements of the mass of mankind. System. William Jennings Bryan, for example, denounced eugenics as an impossible system for scientific breeding under which a few supposedly superior intellects, self-appointed, would direct the mating and the movements of the mass of mankind. But the most consistent opposition to eugenics came from Roman Catholics. In 1930, Pope Pius XI strongly condemned forced sterilization for eugenics in one of his encyclicals. The Pope criticized eugenists for asking the government to assume a power which it can never legitimately possess.
The most fundamental principle of Catholic social teaching is the intrinsic dignity of every human being. In other words, people are valuable simply as creatures made in the image and likeness of God. They're not valuable merely because they have economic value or they're productive or they're smart. They have value in and of themselves as spiritual creatures.
So before we get too far, remember this is in 1932, tribe. Okay. So in 1932, and a couple years prior, they created this Congress, right, to address specific sterilization and who will be sterilized, things of that nature, right? So boom, what pops out the fucking sky? Let's check it out. So the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male, right? This study started in 1932, ironically, you know what I'm saying? Remember who they said was at the eugenics conferences? The American Red Cross. Like peep the play, okay? Just peep the play, okay? So at the same time, they motherfucking doing exposés for Galton and goddamn Darwin. They running the Tuskegee experiment. Now, the Tuskegee experiment would be the precursor for you know, what will ultimately happen to Henrietta Lacks and a lot of other people throughout the region. You know what I'm saying? Hold on real quick. Let me go back. I skipped over a little bit. Let's go.
As creatures made in the image and likeness of God. They're not valuable merely because they have economic value or they're productive or they're smart. They have value in and of themselves as spiritual creatures made in God's image. That idea obviously contradicts the fundamental principle of eugenics, which is through either passive or active means to favor particular ethnic groups over others.
Across America, Catholic clergy actively resisted the eugenics crusade. In Louisiana, the Catholic Church played a key role in preventing the passage of a sterilization law. Catholic opposition to eugenics was so pronounced that some eugenics groups targeted the Catholic Church for attacks. The Human Betterment Foundation in California was dedicated to promoting eugenics through forced sterilization. Its president, E.S. Gosney, lashed out at Catholic efforts to block sterilization laws.
Every legislature considering a sterilization bill in the United States is visited by...
Now, the ill shit about this, gang, is that they're not trying to address sterilization for niggas and shit. Like, I just peeped this whole play. They ain't even pushing, in my opinion, they ain't pushing sterilization for niggas just quiet. And if they are, that's like the public side of the game. I'm thinking what they doing is motherfucking pushing the sterilization and the ultimate extermination of all of they little experiments that just came out of all these motherfucking world fairs. All of these motherfuckers got some funny looking heads and shit, man. Like, these are some weird ass looking motherfuckers, man. Just look at this. They talking about this nigga, the head of the... Look at this nigga. This nigga actually looked in the mirror and had conceived that he had motherfucking better qualities. And he need to be the head of the goddamn sterilization Congress and shit, or whatever the fuck this nigga was. All of these niggas look like fucking science experiments and shit, man. For real.
Ms. Gosney lashed out at Catholic efforts to block sterilization laws.
Every legislature considering a sterilization bill in the United States is visited by representatives of the bishop or archbishop who lay down the law of Rome to those willing to accept it. The henchmen are prompt to fall in line.
Gosney suggested that the Catholic Church should be asked to pay for Catholics who aren't sterilized.
If Catholics do not want their feeble-minded communicants sterilized, it would seem more logical to ask them, as Hitler has done in Germany, to keep these feeble-minded segregated at their own expense, in order that the American common...
Shout out to my brother Marcus Adamu for sending in a donation. That's our second donation on our first 9 for 9. 7 more donations of $9 more. We'll lock that in. Let's go.
Wealth may be subjected to no unnecessary damage from the presence of a great body of defectives who increase the amount of human misery, contribute largely to the ranks of the delinquent and criminal, augment the tax burdens, diminish the efficiency of industry, and dilute the quality of American citizenship.
The eugenics movement and the supporters of eugenics in the early 20th century actually tried to make an anti-Catholic campaign part of their public argument. On the one hand, they claimed that their ideas were based firmly in natural science, and yet they actually ran a public campaign that was anti-religious. You get the impression that there was something more than simple empirical science at stake in the debate.
Despite opposition from Catholics and others, the American eugenics movement continued to flourish in the years leading up to World War II.
Now, what's different from the eugenics movement and the motherfucking, what was we watching? The Birth of a Nation? Like, what? All that's happening at the same time.
The eugenics movement eventually led to the forced sterilization of more than 60,000 people in America. Compulsory sterilization in the name of eugenics was ultimately upheld by the United States Supreme Court in a decision that declared, 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. Many of those sterilized would not be considered mentally handicapped today. The eugenics movement also succeeded in securing the passage of a draconian immigration law that sharply restricted the flow of non-Nordic ethnic groups into the United States. While considering the legislation, the United States Congress invited testimony by a leading eugenist on the biological aspects of immigration.
Starting in the 1920s in particular, there was a huge push for immigration restrictions on people who are coming from non-Germanic, non-Northern European countries. And so
that's very interesting, right? Like they bring in millions of motherfuckers, but depending on who's trying to get them in, right? At some point they letting all the motherfuckers they want to in. Then they start trying to say, well, nah, we got enough of these whatever fucking race they don't like in their country. So we're gonna gauge it towards more Germanic. Now that's very interesting because it's always, think about it. You got fucking Darwin and Galton, all these German scientists is what's backing all of these thoughts, right? And it's also very interesting because this is the same niggas around the same time niggas start studying them nigga spots too. You know what I'm saying? Well, a little bit before that, but like I said, relatively the same 100 years. We talk 1865 to 1965. All of this shit happened. Like everything they talking about, all the history and shit happened relatively in between that time period. Let's continue.
People coming from Mexico to the United States, or people coming from Africa or Southern European countries that had, or people, Northern European countries. And so people coming from Mexico to the United States, or people coming from Africa.
I just wanted to pause because they tried to run that shit by fast. I wanted to see what the fuck was on their heads. I was trying to see if that's hair or motherfucking some type of something. I don't know.
Or Southern European countries that had people that the eugenists viewed as evolutionarily backwards. They had to be stopped because they were going to destroy our society.
But the most horrifying implementation of eugenics policies took place not in America, but in Nazi Germany. The Nazis ultimately sterilized more than 300,000 supposed hereditary defectives in the name of eugenics. They then started gassing the disabled at special medical facilities. It was in these killing centers that the Nazis began to perfect the methods they would later use to exterminate Jews.
See, they leaving shit out though. Like they leaving shit out that if you really know like world history, you'll understand. The Nazis, okay, the Americans did not start euthanizing and sterilizing motherfuckers. They didn't start that concept. You know what I'm saying? Ultimately, as we see the immigration of more Germanic, Nordic people, you're going to start to see their culture and their, shit start to be implemented. But the Germans learned that shit from the Japanese. The Japanese was motherfucking euthanizing and putting the goddamn Chinese in camps and shit and doing the same shit. All of this was happening around, right before World War I believe. I forgot the goddamn actual name, but I'll find it for y'all. But yeah, Japanese is putting motherfuckers in camps and sterilizing them and euthanizing them and all that shit before America was even thought of.
Jews. The sordid history of eugenics and the mainstream scientific community's embrace of it remains completely unknown to many Americans. So does the scientific community's involvement with social Darwinism and scientific racism, including human zoos. It's a history some people are still trying to cover up. Geneticist James Watson won the Nobel Prize for co-discovering the structure of DNA. But in 2007, he sparked outrage when he suggested that African blacks were genetically inferior to European whites. Echoing the arguments of scientific racists from the past, Watson claimed that black inferiority was due to evolution.
There is no firm reason to anticipate that the intellectual capacities of peoples geographically separated in their evolution should prove to have evolved identically. James Watson.
Watson was widely condemned for his comments, both inside and outside of the scientific community. It was an indication of how times have changed. But although scientific racism no longer receives support from mainstream science, many in the scientific community remain reluctant to honestly discuss the past. Sharon Weston Broome is mayor of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. In 2001, she was a member of the Louisiana House of Representatives when she proposed a resolution to encourage teaching students about the history of scientific racism. The resolution highlighted Darwin's views on race, as well as how his views had been exploited by other scientists, such as Ernst Haeckel, to promote racism. The resolution also encouraged teaching students more recent scientific findings supporting racial equality.
I'm not asking you to take evolution out of the school. I am merely asking the legislature, the State Department of Education, the Board of Regents, and the state university systems that they be made aware that Darwin promoted the justification of racism in his definitive works on the origin.
So that's very interesting. And shout out to my brother Roger W. for sending in 2 donations. That is our 3rd and 4th donation on our first 9 for 9. 5 more donations of $9 and more. We'll lock that in. Very interesting. So right, they teach this in school. They know they teach this. They know the history behind this. See, this is the hidden hand that motherfucking niggas don't want to talk about when they try and tell you that the DNA test told you was motherfucking African. Okay? The motherfucker who sequenced the DNA genetic structure, you heard what he just motherfucker said, right? And when you go back throughout their little revisionist history, that's all it is these little German scientists and shit and scientists from other countries over there making these hypotheses about other races, ultimately trying to find the missing link, not knowing that it's their ass. That's what it seems like to me. So now this mayor, she says she don't want to take it out of school because she know they ain't going for that. Like you gonna be Caesar, motherfucker. Like Caesar is your cousin. Okay, but she said just highlight, what Darwin was really about. And I could see how that could be effective. But at the end of the day, if the school systems is pushing this, if the contemporary science institutions still utilize their foundations from these individuals, you gotta ask yourself, like, would this be considered pseudoscience?
Of species by means of natural selection and the descent of man. I certainly understand that racism was in effect before Darwin. This has never been denied. Yet he was the originator of a scientific justification for racism, as well as giving wings to modern racism. Harvard University's Stephen Jay Gould wrote, quote, biological arguments for racism may have been common before 1859, but they increased by orders of magnitude following the acceptance of evolutionary theory.
Broome's resolution provoked a firestorm, with supporters of Darwin's theory accusing her of trying to unfairly malign Charles Darwin.
This resolution is not only a product of creationists, but also Christian supremacists. And Christian supremacism is a hate-based ideology, and you can't combat hatred with hatred.
I never, ever have emulated any type of hate towards anyone.
The resolution only passed after all references to Darwin and Haeckel were deleted. It was as if scientific racism had never happened. But Louisiana isn't the only state where the past misuse of science has been censored. In 2007, the Kansas State Board of Education rewrote a statewide curriculum standard about the history of science. The standard originally called for students to understand both the positive and negative aspects of science on society, including how science can be abused. As examples of the abuse of science, the original standard cited the eugenics movement, scientific racism, and the infamous Tuskegee syphilis experiment, where government researchers left poor black men untreated for syphilis in order to observe the progression of the disease. The Kansas Board of Education revised the curriculum standard to eliminate any study of the abuses of science. Now students would only learn about how science had improved society. The original standard did not mention Darwin or Darwin's theory. That did not stop proponents of rewriting the standard from claiming they were defending the teaching of evolution. But public officials aren't the only ones who have tried to cover up the history of scientific racism. Some of the institutions most involved in promoting scientific racism in the past are still suppressing their own history. The American Museum of Natural History remains one of the world's leading science museums. But to this day, it has never apologized for the role it played in promoting the international eugenics movement. It has also tried to downplay the role of scientists in promoting scientific racism. In 2005, the museum mounted a major new exhibition on the life and legacy of Charles Darwin. The exhibition is still available today as a traveling exhibit. The exhibit contains a section on social Darwinism that fails to acknowledge any involvement by the scientific community in either eugenics or scientific racism. Even more glaringly, the exhibit also fails to disclose the museum's own role in promoting social Darwinist policies like eugenics. According to the current exhibit, social Darwinism had no real connection with either Darwin or science.
The fact of the matter is that if you read the scientists of the day, in the late 19th and early 20th century, many of them were promoting racism and even racial extermination, extinction of races. They were promoting the gaining of living space. They were promoting competition, the things that we know of as social Darwinism. These were things being promoted by Charles Darwin himself to some degree, many other leading biologists, Ernst Haeckel in Germany, and many others. You could go on. And by the 1920s and 30s, they were becoming very prominent. If you look especially in the field of anthropology and evolutionary anthropology, many of them were promoting social Darwinism. This was not just an idea of some cranks or some political people that didn't really understand the science. This was an idea that was very prominent in scientific circles.
Officials at the American Museum of Natural History declined a request to be interviewed for this documentary. Their stated reason was that filmmakers were unable to purchase $2 million in insurance. The museum also turned down repeated requests to answer questions about its history and writing. Officials at the Bronx Zoo are likewise skittish when it comes to discussing its display of Ota Benga. They also refuse to be interviewed. And if you visit the zoo today, you won't find any remembrance of what happened to Ota Benga.
Instead, what they've done is they've closed off the monkey house. So where Ota Benga is housed, it's new for the public to not even see it now. And they have just not had any comment whatsoever.
It's as if zoo officials hope that Ota Benga and the scientific racism that dehumanized him will stay forgotten.
We're living a battle, yes, and the God is on our side. We're not afraid of losing, not me. So we're not afraid to fight. We're fighting for our freedom. We're dying for our rights, yeah. Still in my darkest hour, oh dread, I found paradise. So where is the justice? Somebody tell me now. Where is the peace you talk about? Still living in darkness. Oh, somebody tell me now. Tell me where are the keepers of the light? The light. The light. Where are the keepers of the light? The light. The light. Where are the keepers of the light? Trapped in this dark place, wish a light to shine on me. I'm trying to keep my faith, the one thing they can't take from me. Where are the believers who believe in life, that will risk it all to fight the good fight. Here we go again. Children of the light, on you we all depend. And we can make it work, for we know what it's worth. Why don't you stop the wars from all over this earth? So where is the justice? Somebody tell me now. Where is the peace you talk about? Still living in darkness. Oh, somebody tell me now.
There was a time when the day the circus came to town was the biggest day of the year. Farmers in the Midwest, factory workers in New England, children in crowded cities, everyone counted on the traveling circus to amuse and entertain them. When the circus came to town, businesses and schools would shut down so that people could follow the free parade down Main Street. In this parade came the most exotic and extravagant attractions any American could ever hope to see in his own hometown. Bizarre beasts from distant continents, charcoal-burning, steam-powered calliops, 40 horses hitched in a single team, pulling a $20,000 bandwagon. And perhaps most exotic of all, the men and women who worked and performed with the circus and who lived the circus life. They walked on wire. They danced on horseback. They flew through the air. They acted like they enjoyed risking their lives. They were 9 feet tall. They had 2 heads, or hair all over their bodies. They always knew the latest joke.
That shit look like Cousin It, no motherfucking cap, boy. Like, oh my God. Is that a goddamn, that what, baby? What was her special power? Like, do you, wait a minute. What are we doing here exactly? Shit.
They had two heads. Or
I see them all, nigga. I'm looking at everybody, nigga. This is America's Horror Story. If these are part of the motherfucker, yeah, somebody is that. Somebody get Harold off the goddamn flute. Like, goddamn, the editor, the producer didn't notice that Harold was completely off the fucking key.
There were 9.
I guess, goddamn, the producer, goddamn, plays flute on the weekend.
Feet tall. They had two heads. Or hair all over their bodies. They always knew the latest jokes and the latest songs. They spoke their own language and lived by their own rules in their own world.
You said back then that nigga was he was him.
The audiences of America couldn't get enough of the circus.
Red hot. Here's where you get your red hot roasted peanuts. Those big double jointed humpback.
By the end of the 19th century, the circus would become a major industry. But in the early days, all it took was a caravan of wagons to bring a self-contained reality into town. A small, mysterious world for just 50 cents. Americans had mixed feelings about traveling show people. They admired them. They were jealous of them. They were afraid of them. They fell in love with them. The greatest fans were probably the children. They were most likely to believe the brightly colored posters or to have crushes on the scantily clad acrobats. Kids scared their parents by trying to imitate dangerous stunts and by threatening to join the circus when it left town.
He did the soundtrack.
Parents, too, would admire the skill of a famous bareback rider, but they could also question the moral character of these all too worldly performers.
You said this is Andre 100. Even Andre like, man, hell no. I can't get jiggy with this.
The men and women of the circus celebrated their bodies and pushed them to new limits. Performers put themselves on display in the circus in ways that weren't allowed anywhere else. In the process, they helped redefine Victorian ideas of masculine and feminine behavior. And by performing for audiences across the country, they brought their cosmopolitan attitudes to the hinterlands of America. The reputation of the circus for corruption was not entirely a matter of old-fashioned morality. Insiders said that a large percentage of circus profits in the smaller traveling shows before 1900 came from various forms of grift, cheating the customers. It started weeks before the circus ever got to town, when the advance men plastered every available surface with lithographs hyping the coming show. Although everyone knew that no circus could ever quite match its advertising, anticipation and excitement were formidable by the time the circus hit town. Although everyone knew that no circus could ever quite match its advertising, the anticipation and excitement were formidable by the time the circus hit town. The circus troupe would descend quickly, with an air of disdain for the local natives who often seemed so out of touch with the outside world. The men who sold tickets to the anxious crowds often received no salary. In some circuses, the ticket takers even paid for the privilege. Their compensation was the money they shortchanged from the throngs. Shills were hired to get in line and push just to increase the excitement. And dips or pickpockets were permitted to operate on the midway in return for a percentage of what could be stolen. The crowd would pass the sideshow and move through the menagerie tents on their way to the big top. It was around the sideshow tent that the con artists hung out. They offered such attractions as alcohol and gambling to gullible local men. Circus people used the word rube to describe local natives who were easily swindled. Fights between the show people and the rubes were an almost daily occurrence. Circus men knew to expect violence in some towns, like Scranton, Pennsylvania, where the coal miners had a reputation for short tempers. When they felt ripped off, they'd attack with rocks and lumps of coal. Or New Haven, Connecticut, where the young men of Yale always tried some college prank. When they tried to steal a trained monkey, the circus troupe used an elephant to fight back. Brawls between circuses and rubes could last for hours, and on several notorious occasions left over 20 dead. But rarely did circus troopers let such dangers slow them down. Most of them were born into the circus, with sawdust in their veins, they said.
See, this is how they got y'all on that zesty shit. They started in the circus with the bearded lady and the dude with the beard in the dress. Like, that's crazy as hell. Like,
Trained in the skills of their parents, they knew no other life. They took pride in always making it to the next town, and always putting on a show that would keep the rubes coming back year after year. Then there were those with a different vision of what the American circus could be. something more than a shady little show that gets in fights with the locals. Of these ambitious showmen, Phineas Taylor Barnum was the most visionary and the most successful. Crucial to his success with the circus was 30 years' experience running the world's most popular private museum. Everyone who went to Manhattan in the mid-1800s went to Barnum's American Museum. The most brilliant scientists and the simplest country bumpkins, European royalty and recent immigrants who could barely afford the 25-cent admission. They came to...
This kind of like reeks like them like finding some shit or founding some shit or just discovering some shit and then presenting it to the world to make some money off of it. I don't know why. It just reeks that.
To see stuffed animals, technological marvels, and supposedly ancient relics, as well as living curiosities, lions, white whales, camel leopards, leopard boys, albino families, and Siamese twins.
So as I was
Barnum himself was something of a living curiosity. He had cultivated a name for himself as the Prince of Humbugs. A humbug is a hoax, and Barnum was the master who mingled the scandalous, the ludicrous, and the sensational with enough education and morality to make the whole thing seem acceptable to all. Barnum's humbugs were perfectly suited to their audience. America's rapidly growing cities were starved for diversion, and at Barnum's museum people found a uniquely democratic entertainment. No one trusted the experts. Each individual decided for himself whether or not he was being bamboozled. His exhibition of the Fiji mermaid was typical. Barnum first drummed up interest by writing letters about the mermaid under false names and sending the letters to New York newspapers. Then he created advertisements based on what people might hope a mermaid would look like. What the public actually saw, after they paid their 25 cents, was the stuffed torso of a monkey skillfully sewn to the tail of a fish. Even if people suspected there would be no real mermaid, they came in droves, just to see what Phineas Taylor Barnum was up to.
What the hell? Baby, whoa. Man, if I see that shit, man. What in the fuck? You got that shit perm? What the fuck? That's scary.
Barnum had the ability to repeat his success almost endlessly. On several occasions, fires reduced his museum with all of its attractions and all of his animals to nothing.
That fire bullshit. Hey, connect that shit.
But after each catastrophe, Barnum rose again on the strength of his wits and his reputation. During one of these comebacks, he decided not to rebuild his museum. Already 60 years old, Barnum began a new career in the circus.
circus had been around for a long time before Barnum decided to take it over. Men like Purdy Brown, Gilbert Spaulding, James Raymond, and Nathan Howes had already begun the process of turning European circus traditions into a profitable American business. Barnum went into business with a circus man named William Cameron Coop. Together, they combined Barnum's museum and menagerie with a traditional circus and took them on the road. It was billed as a great traveling exposition and World's Fair consisting of caravan, gallery of statuary and fine arts, Polytechnic Institute, zoological garden, and 100,000 curiosities.
Goddamn traveling World's Fair. P.T. Barnum.
The actual word circus was played down to avoid any impression of vulgarity. Of his new show, Barnum said, "For many years it has been my pleasure to provide a class of instructive and amusing entertainments to which a refined Christian mother can take her children with satisfaction." Barnum advertised something for everyone: music, theater, science, fine art, clowns, trained animals, the world's greatest acrobats. Barnum combined it all into one show that would dwarf and destroy his competition. In the world of the circus, old means of transportation were holding competitors back. Horse-drawn wagons on country roads could only travel 15 to 20 miles at a time, forcing even the biggest circuses to stop.
So they was laying concrete so that the wagons could roll over. It would have been like, but then we ain't talking about like what was they using to build this shit to prepare for these circuses and world fairs? Like how was they moving? Like,
and play many small, unprofitable towns.
Check this out. I'm going to show you how I afforded.
Some say it was Coop, and others say it was Barnum, who decided to bring the circus up to date to move the entire operation by rail. It had never been tried on such a huge scale. The logistics were incredible. 3 separate trains, 61 cars, 3 acres of canvas, almost 1,000 people, and hundreds of animals, all needed to be loaded, moved to the next town, and unloaded every 24 hours, with time left over for a parade and 3 performances. It fell on Coop as manager of the show to make it work. Many of the techniques developed by Coop remained in use for as long as circuses traveled by rail. A system of ramps and bridges between the railroad flat cars made it possible to load and unload the train from the ends, rather than having to hoist wagons over the side. 130 men loaded the circus trains. They were called razorbacks, and they had highly specialized tasks, driving the horses, guiding the poles, chocking the front or the rear wheels, snubbing the brake rope. They had to work carefully to the rhythm of the trainmaster's.
You telling me they use this technology to build fucking megalithic structures? Like, come on, man. We got 53 people in the building. Bang, I like that shit video out.
Whistle. Moving the circus by rail was even more dangerous than performing under the tent. Despite the obstacles and the dangers, Barnum and Coop grossed over $1 million in 6 months. Within a few years, Coop's railroad techniques were being adopted by other shows. The word railroad in circus advertising came to mean big, clean, and modern. Some of those who thought of circuses as dirty bohemian operations began revising their opinions. Yesterday, by the power of his presence and the magic of his golden advertising wand, Barnum transformed the hard-time dullness of our streets into the gayest of holiday airs. He peopled the waste places with a multitude of expectant faces. He delighted and instructed thousands, and finally sent everybody to bed, established in the conviction that he was the biggest-hearted and best showman in the world, and a representative American. Akron Daily Argus, 1875. Barnum's railroad circus found itself turning back customers from overcrowded tents. At the time, all circuses were one-ring circuses. All acts were trained in a standard-sized ring, only 42 feet in diameter. To squeeze more people into the tent, without enlarging the ring and retraining all the animals, Coop and Barnum added a second ring, 2 parallel circuses. Zazel the Human Cannonball was one of the first of the many daredevils who became popular with Barnum's show. Her basic technique of launching herself with an India rubber spring and using smoke and a loud bang to complete the illusion has been copied ever since. The big railroad circuses tried always to be modern. New inventions and fashionable crazes were turned quickly into startling sensations. Daredevils died in these modern contraptions. Professor Donaldson took off in his balloon one day and was never seen again. Diavolo died trying to execute his famous loop-the-loop on a bicycle once too often. But sometimes the acts weren't as dangerous as they looked. When Barnum advertised Salamander, the fire horse, jumping through blazing hoops, the ASPCA threatened to close the circus down. Barnum exploited the controversy as only he could. The 70-year-old impresario made a rare appearance at the circus, and in front of an audience packed with police and reporters, stepped through the fire himself. The chemical flames were frightening but harmless, and the ASPCA backed down. There was an educational component to these exhibits.
Industrial Exposition in 1896 was Dr. Martin Cooney's moment to shine. The expo in Berlin, like most World's fairs, was a place for industry and inventors to meet and present to the world the latest in technology and science that would make everyone's lives better. Cooney was there to present his invention, an incubator for babies. The idea was that by using an apparatus to regulate the temperature of a premature baby, along with constant care and attention, the infant mortality rate might be lowered. With a flair for entertainment, Cooney realized that the best way to win over the attention of fairgoers was to put on a show. Sure, he could just show off the machines, but wouldn't it be better if guests got to see them in action? The Kinderbrutenstalt, or Child Hatchery exhibit, was a hit, and it would kick off a nearly half-century of like-minded displays of the life-saving technology run by Cooney that would help change the world. The thing is, almost none of that was true. Dr. Martin Cooney wasn't displaying incubators at the Berlin Expo. Cooney didn't invent the incubator either. It was invented over 30 years before he was born in Russia. Dr. Martin Cooney wasn't even a doctor. It was all part of an ever-changing origin story that Cooney would write and revise over the years to help sell the drama behind his boardwalk incubators. But for an origin tale that was laced and borrowed with anecdotes and fabricated details, there was one truth to it all. Martin Cooney would help change the world. Depending on who you asked and when you asked it, Martin Cooney was either born in France or Germany. He'd often claim Alsace, which I guess depending on the year confirmed one or the other. Depending on who you asked, Cooney would then matriculate in either Berlin or Leipzig, where he would earn his medical degree before the age of 18. From there, he would allegedly be taken under the wing of a physician, Pierre Boudin, who he would then work with on the baby incubators and subsequently get sent to the exposition in Berlin. Ultimately, none of it was true. He was born Michael Cohn in Poland in 1869. He never received a medical degree, and in 1888 he boarded a ship for America, where he would begin a new life as a showman under the name Martin Arthur. That talent as a showman would quickly see him brought back overseas to London in 1897 with his business partner, Sam Schenkein. It was Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. While Martin wasn't actually involved in the Berlin Incubator exhibit, the exhibit was real and it was really a hit. The exhibit was run by a Dr. Alexander Leon. So the two capitalized on Dr. Leon's incubators by licensing out the machines to put on their own shows during the Jubilee. The show would be a success, seeing over 200,000 paying guests. As the signs on the exhibit buildings often exclaimed, "All the world loves a baby." So there was a universal appeal for fairgoers. Here was life at its most fragile, and it was technology that was saving it. It was a spectacle. After the show, the two decided to bring the exhibit back to the States for the Trans-Mississippi Exposition in Omaha, Nebraska. This was the 1890s, so you couldn't go 5 feet without running into an exposition. Folks loved expositions back then. It was upon that return that Martin decided his name could use a little more flair. Borrowing from his older brother, Alphonse, who had immigrated to the States earlier, he picked a last name inspired by one of the more famous centers of amusement and entertainment in America, Coney Island. Adding a U to the name to keep it fancy, Martin Arthur, previously Michael Cohn, was now Martin A. Cooney. When it came to his incubator show, Cooney cared deeply for the health of the premature babies coming in, but he still wasn't an actual doctor. So he hired a registered nurse by the name of Annabelle May Segner. Incoming babies were bathed right away, rubbed with alcohol, swaddled, and then put in the incubator, which was kept at a temperature of 96 degrees. At that point, the baby would be assigned a fake show name in order to protect their privacy. Those babies would be fed every 2 hours, either naturally or, if needed, by spoon through the nose, predating the use of a feeding tube. May and other nurses would live full-time at the exhibit in order to care for the infants around the clock. The nurses were also encouraged to show love and affection to the babies, especially when caring for them in front of the public. It was partially for show, but it was also to the benefit of the infants. There was a fear at the time of something called hospitalism, which was when infants would run into developmental issues due to a prolonged lack of human and social contact during long hospital stays. It was one of the many reasons that people at the time avoided hospitals if they could. The other reason that people usually avoided them were because they were basically big old death houses. The concept of hygiene and cleanliness as it relates to the spread of disease and infection was still fairly new, and so spending a stint at a hospital could actually be as much of a risk as it was a benefit, making it a last resort for most. Cooney's
But they build in the megalithic structures. Remember that, though. They ain't got their health in order. They building these big-ass buildings, skyscrapers.
Incubator exhibits, on the other hand, were strictly cleaned on a regular basis. Again, this was to the benefit of the show being put on, yet it was also a benefit for the infants. This combination of focused care, affection, and cleanliness resulted in an operation in which a reported 85% of the premature babies brought into Cooney grew enough to go home with their parents. That was a massive improvement over the status quo, in which premature babies were often left to just die. As for the final medical bill for the parents who brought in the babies, nothing. It was completely free of charge and funded entirely by the guests who were paying admission to see the incubators. After a few more expositions, Cooney would begin to settle down. In 1903, he would open a semi-permanent version of the sideshow at Coney Island right by Dreamland, and shortly after that, he would open another at the Atlantic City Boardwalk in New Jersey. Now Cooney would be able to operate all summer, every summer. Everything seemed great, but this is when the flaws, some of them deadly, began to surface. For one, Cooney's ultimate mission with these sideshows was to promote the technology behind baby incubators to the point where the medical community would start using them regularly to save babies across the globe. The problem was that as a sideshow going on for 8 years, it was cementing the incubators in the public's mind as just that, a sideshow. They were a midway amusement, flanked with rides, games, and other boardwalk activities. Cooney, fake doctor title or otherwise, lacked the prestige that would have come from a more renowned doctor running the show. It was that kind of image that prevented the endeavor from being taken seriously. More dangerously, though, his success bred imitators, and it was only a matter of time before the financially minded organizers of World's fairs put profit before safety. When it came to the 1904 Louisiana Purchase Exposition in St. Louis, Cooney was outbid when it came to the fair's planned incubator exhibit. Another showman by the name of Edward Bayliss wanted to get in on the incubator action and figured it couldn't be that difficult to run. Feed a few babies, crank up the heat. What's so hard about that? He offered between 40 and 50% of the venue's sales, beating out Cooney. Cooney, at the time, wasn't too bothered by it. He had just opened his sideshows in Coney Island and Atlantic City, so he had his hands full and wouldn't be hurting for business. He was outraged, however, when he'd come to learn of the fair's exhibit. Citing a filthy show space, poor...
Don't just use the internet, unleash
and improperly regulated temperatures, the St. Louis incubator exhibit was a fatal one. Of the 43 premature babies taken in for the show, 39 of them didn't make it. After nearly 40 infant deaths, fair organizers threatened to close down the exhibit. Bayliss and his associates claimed that they took steps to rectify the problems, but the damage had already been done. Beyond the needlessly tragic loss of life, the incident set back the progress Cooney was making in convincing the medical community of the incubator's worth. But he kept pushing forward, and Cooney's sideshow continued on for the next 29 years. And over time, the amusement aspect evolved. Cooney expanded the show by occasionally holding reunions in which babies who had graduated from the incubators, now teenagers and young adults, would get together for a celebration and to show the public that premature babies were growing up to be perfectly healthy. The show also occasionally saw detractors, some of which were convinced that the babies on display weren't real babies, and some who accused him of stealing babies to fill the machines. In actuality, though, the babies were brought in by parents who often had no other option. Even in the few instances where their nearby hospital did have an incubator, the cost was usually too high for the parents. This would become especially true as the country entered into the Great Depression. By that point, Martin and May had a daughter, Hildegard, who herself was a premature baby who had survived through Cooney's incubators. She had grown up to follow the footsteps of her mother and was one of the nurses at the Atlantic City exhibit. The two shows on the East Coast had seen their fair share of changes. The Coney Island exhibit especially would relocate a few times as a result of devastating fires nearby. Amusement parks and fire kind of went hand in hand in those days. Everything was wood. Luckily, in both instances, the staff was able to save all of the babies. However, the incidents did bring attention to Cooney, raising the question of whether it was ethical to have the incubators set up as an amusement on the boardwalk. That year, Martin would finally get his opportunity to advance his cause. He made plans to build an incubator exhibit at the 1933 Chicago World's Fair, christened A Century of Progress. By this point, the exhibit was practically a World's Fair staple. This time, however, he was joined by a Dr. Julius Hess, who was the director of the Sarah Morris Children's Hospital and head of the Chicago Medical Society. They would also be joined by Dr. Herman Bundesen, the Chicago Health Commissioner at the time. During the 1934 season of the fair, Cooney would put on a large reunion, bringing together 41 premature graduates who were in the incubators that previous year. The grand event was broadcast over the radio. The publicity, paired with the living, breathing proof of the incubator's success, and the word of two respected doctors, finally gave Cooney's show the legitimacy it was always looking for. Over the next decade, the use of incubators began to slowly grow. Cooney would continue to run his two amusements on the boardwalk. In 1936, his wife, May, who had helped him run the amusements for so many years, would die during surgery. Running the business alone, Cooney would ultimately make a financial mistake in 1939 by paying to set up his incubator exhibit at the New York World's Fair. By this point, the entire incubator amusement concept was over 40 years old. It had been included in over 6 World's Fairs and had 2 permanent locations that operated all summer, every summer. It just wasn't as new and exciting. Beyond that, the World's Fair was just a subway ride away from Coney Island, where the incubators were on display for the last 36 years. Anyone from the region who was visiting the fair had likely already seen the novelty, so why pay to see it again? The exhibit was ultimately a financial disaster, and it would mark his last World's Fair. In 1943, Martin A. Cooney, after nearly half a century of promoting and running the incubator sideshows, would retire, claiming his mission was a success. The rise in neonatology and the adoption of baby incubators would result in Cornell, New York Hospital opening the city's first dedicated station for premature infants. It was just one hospital, but it was the symbolic embrace of the incubator technology that Cooney had been seeking all those years. He would live out his remaining years humbly, never really financially recovering from the New York World's Fair. On March 1st, 1950, Martin Cooney passed away. He was buried with his wife May at Cypress Hills Cemetery. It was estimated that between 1897 and 1942, Cooney and his team saved between 6,500 and 7,000 premature babies. It's fair to say that there has probably never been or ever will be another boardwalk amusement or exhibit that had such a life-altering impact on so many people. Not to mention slowly pushing forward the concept of neonatology over the course of nearly 50 years. Martin Cooney was not the doctor he claimed to be. He didn't get the start he claimed to get. He wasn't even born where he said he was born. But regardless of the fictionalized origin story, Martin Cooney did save thousands of infants, and he changed the world in the process.
All right, tribe. That's all I got for y'all today. I'll see y'all tomorrow for Giveaway Friday. So make sure y'all tap in. Same time, same place. I hope y'all have a great rest of the day. I'll catch y'all on the next one, tribe. Peace.